Triple KO!
Hello and welcome back to Triple KO. It's quadruple KO today because we have our special guest, Thorgi, from Thorgi's Retrospective Fighting Game Emporium, I believe is the full name of your YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah, we couldn't fit all that on the marquee, so we just shortened it to Arcade, but that's what it is on the business card.
Right, and we have, of course, Maximilian and Justin Wong via Las Vegas. So this has been a little while coming. A few episodes ago, I think it was Justin and Max. You guys were talking about Devil Jin and Kazuya. Yeah. And I just said, Tekken is the dumbest, isn't it? Like in a glorious way. Because when you really start thinking about its lore and how crazy it's gotten, well, no, it's because you had played the story mode, right?
Mode,
Max,
yeah.
of Tekken 8,
and it's just as audacious and ridiculous as it ever has been.
So I played that 15 minutes of the demo. You had played the hour, or both you and Justin had played the hour of it, and you're like, that was the start. That was
it was good. Yeah, I had fun. I mean, it's family drama, like trashy reality TV, like the Kim Kardashians type of thing, but Tekken style. And all of a sudden, let's do a tournament with all this chaotic stuff. And, when it comes to the lore, I feel like it's always exciting with fighting games because for some reason, it always revolves around world domination and then a tournament, no matter what. So, yeah, I love it.
Okay, let's start right there. Is there a fighting game where it doesn't involve like world domination? Maybe it's like lower stakes than that.
Yeah, lower stakes. I'm pretty sure there's lower stakes, but if you think about the main ones like Street Fighter, I mean, look, there's Shadaloo, Mortal Kombat, Earthrealm, and Outworld, like, and Tekken, like
Virtua Fighter, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I was about to say Virtua Fighter, but then I was like, well, they fight a robot at the end. Is the robot trying to conquer the world? I don't know what they're doing.
Maybe Max knows. Isn't there a shadowy organization in Virtua Fighter?
I don't remember one. Maybe something in the anime somewhere. Peaceful, right? But everybody's personal story in Virtua Fighter is extremely personal. Like, I'm fighting a shark. I am a Native American guy. Or not even, right? I am Japanese karate man. I copied Bruce Lee's moves. Like, that's it. That's their whole story.
But the only thing I know of Virtua Fighter, like in the games, I recall something is that Sarah Bryant gets brainwashed by somebody.
Okay.
And someone gets kidnapped. That's somewhere. I don't
So there's a modicum of
where.
intrigue somewhere in there.
So Thorgi, you'll never make a retrospective on Virtua Fighter because there's no lore to talk about, right?
Oh no, I'll do it, but it will be the quickest one I ever do, and I will now love Virtua Fighter. It will be my favorite franchise of all time because I'll pump it out in a week.
Right.
It'll be great.
Maybe you can like make some things up as you go, like, oh yeah, and this happens, and everyone will be like, yeah, probably, I don't know, right? You could.
I've had to do that before when I was doing the BlazBlue video. I had to talk to people who run the BlazBlue wiki page to get answers on what the hell this was, because like I always enjoyed BlazBlue for like just the combat alone. When it came to the story, I was like, there's some funny gags in here, but I don't know what the hell anyone is talking about. So I had to actually ask people, and like the people who run the BlazBlue wiki page got back to me, and they were very helpful, very nice people, answered all my questions, but they also always had this, like, they always kind of had this response of, okay, first off, I know. Like, they just had that feeling of like, yeah, we know what this is. So, yeah, there were many times in which there just came a point in which they were like, yeah, we don't even know what's going on at this point. Like, this connects to this, but we're not sure. So I had to go like, based on everything I've put together, I'm pretty sure this is what it is. And no one argued. I may have done that at one point in the King of Fighters one as well, but King of Fighters at least like has most of its stuff laid out. It's just in weird side games and mangas that are canon, but not canon. So...
When you talk about the BlazBlue Wikipedia, right, the fan wiki, or by that measure, the Guilty Gear wiki, I imagine when I think about the people that work on those pages, it's like a floor of people, like in cubicles, to keep it all together. Right?
It's like, hey, let's go this direction and this direction. You know how when you like you see those crime movies and they have like the whiteboard with all the little like, string? That's literally what I feel like anime fighting game lore is. It's like it just goes everywhere. It was way too much.
I think
it absolutely is. Yeah, it's a lot of those games. That's the difference between that and a lot of other fighting games. The Arc System games, like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, you can tell if someone came to them and told them, you can't make fighting games anymore, but you still get to tell the story, they'd be like, I can live with that. Because like the story to them is very important. Yeah. That is a huge part of what they care about. So you can definitely tell like they've got that in their head of like the strings just laid out and everything going from here to here to here, because that's the number one thing that they care about in there. Like I was thinking about that recently with Guilty Gear, because we're now getting Johnny and we're getting Elfelt. We're getting the characters that everybody really wanted in the game, because the first 2 seasons of DLC was like, who's characters? Who's wanting Bedman back? Yeah. Who was wanting that? I'll tell you who. Daisuke. Daisuke wanted to tell the story. He had the story in his head. He won that in the game. But now, like, the story's done, so I was like, I don't know, people want Slayer. Sure, he's character number 3. So I was like, all right.
Yeah, it's always been a funny series, because like they feel like it feels like they take the story so seriously, right? And the way it's presented, how every single game is like, we have a mode dedicated to our story exclusively. You can't even play it. We don't want you to be distracted because you need to focus on our story. Like, it was always the craziest like way to implement character lore.
Yeah, and like people have been asking in Guilty Gear Strive for more single player content, because Guilty Gear Strive, you know, they did make the combat more simplified to appeal to a wider audience, and I really enjoy the combat in Guilty Gear Strive. And I'm like, I know so many people who would be into these characters, and this is the easiest jumping on point for the combat. But there is nothing for them to do in this game other than go online and fight way more skilled people. This needs more single-player content.
Yeah. So
they finally said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you more single-player content. A second story mode that you also can't play.
Yeah.
Like, all right, that is clearly your top priority here.
Because they can make, like you said, if someone told the Arxis you can't make fighting games, or we can make VNs until the end of time. We've actually made VNs essentially for the last couple of years, so they could.
There is important lore in Guilty Gear that happens in a Pachinko game. Like, they will shove it in wherever they can get the chance.
There's important lore in Fatal Fury in a Pachinko game, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's the non-important lore.
Kind of. It's the thing with the Fatal Fury is that years after the last Fatal Fury game came out and SNK was just doing Pachinko games, they put out one Pachinko game that was Geese Howard opens up a casino in Southtown, and Terry Bogard, like, it's spreading corruption throughout the city, so Terry Bogard has to run up the entire casino fighting all of his former villains. Like, Yamazaki's in there, Billy Kane is in there, Krauser's back for some reason. And I was looking at the cutscenes for that when we did the Fatal Fury retrospective, and I just went, this is the most hype Fatal Fury story I can possibly imagine. Terry Bogard has to do the raid. He has to just do the raid, running up a tower, kicking ass, fighting all of his old villains. And I just went, and he had to have a Pachinko game? You can't make this an actual game?
Isn't he a Garou Terry too?
It is. It's not only is it Garou Terry, it's older Garou Terry. He looks even older and more beat up than before. His jacket's like black now.
It's so cool.
It's one of those things where it's like, this feels like it's an actual continuation of the story, except that dead characters are back, but that's entirely a thing that could happen.
I like that the premise begins with the fact that Terry can feel the corruption in the city. So he's like, I have to make the purity of my city is tainted. I have to stop people from gambling.
No, that's because Terry's on the streets and he sees little kids with like Geese Howard t-shirts, and they're all like celebrating geese. Like he's infused the economy with the casino, and he's like, no, get Sidious! And he's like, he just has to do the raid.
That'd be like
that casino better be in City of the Wolves.
That'd be like Terry's infiltrating in modern day steak.com just because so many people are pure and not unpure now.
No,
it
Terry
makes me want to go to Japan. Yeah, it makes me want to go to Japan and look for that pachinko machine to see if it exists in like actual like pachinko places still, or maybe an older pachinko parlor.
Yeah,
apparently they released like all the cutscenes for it just on like the Apple Store just for your phones, and apparently it's been shut down. But it's a weird thing where it's like, so you realize this is an interesting premise, but you just want to sell us the cutscenes now, and you're not going to put it into an actual game. All right. Then again, they weren't making actual games at that point, so understandable, I guess.
I'd buy those cutscenes if they're like high quality.
Would you buy the machine too?
No, I would not buy the machine. I would just save the cutscenes, like fuck Pachinko, you know. But like that's how they get you though. For if they're not making the game store, like let's make really hype shit for like the little cutscene CGI snippets, and maybe some people will check it out.
Yeah, because they realize that people care about these characters. Like you can't play a game with characters returning over and over and over again for 30 years and not in some way get attached to them. Like even the most like fighting game purist out there who will say things like, listen, I will play a game that just has stick figures. As long as the mechanics are good, that's all I care about. But if you played a game with just that one stick figure for 30 years and then a new game came out and he had like a tiny scar on his face, you'd be like, what happened to Stick Figure Guy? What's the backstory of Stick Figure Guy?
Yeah, yes. No, that's a good point. Because that also reminds me of Functions, right? Of course, you have to get Marvel in any
Marvel
discussion
Infinite
with Functions. But actually, I want to go back a little bit. Is there any story? Because I'm not aware of. Is there any story for any of the Versus games before Marvel versus Capcom 3? Like, was there any sort of justification for Marvel 2? Yeah, what was it? I actually don't remember.
It's like a globe-trotting adventure. Ruby Heart is like at the heart of it. They're trying to take down like Abyss or something like that. Like there's some. I think the story is maybe presented in like the actual color instruction booklet in like a Japanese manual or something like that. But it does have like an actual narrative of some kind, other than just being all stars. Fuck it, have fun.
Yeah, it's weird because like when you play through like arcade mode in arcade or even playing at home, there's nothing. You just get this little like graphics in the end after you beat Abyss, and it's just like credits, right? You don't get like kind of like cutscenes from like Marvel 1 or any of the Versus game prior to that. So it always made me believe that there was no story for like the longest time.
Really? Okay.
There is something.
I do remember being in the arcades when I beat it for the first time, and you get those like little like images. They look like old sketched images coming up, but it's the ship going away from an island that's blowing up, and everyone's on the ship celebrating. I was like, why are they on the ship? What? That's a thing.
That's something.
I want more on that.
So can I tell you a fun story about Marvel 2, trying to find Marvel 2 lore? So I'm in Japan. All right, I'm in Japan going through all these like comic book shops, right? And I see this Marvel 2 comic book. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to get it, right? So I get it, and then I opened the page, and it was very rated R.
Oh,
so
it was Ruby Heart.
That's not rated R.
And it's official.
That's
it's
above
official.
rated R.
I don't know if it's official, but it's like
no,
Ruby
it's official.
Heart,
we're saying it.
Ruby Heart and Shumagaraf, and you can see where I'm going.
Of course, it's Shumagaraf.
I'm interested in this story.
That's why he keeps returning.
Yeah, I still have the comic book.
You like framed it or?
No, of course. No, it's like hidden, but it's not something I can post online.
Do they have hitboxes and hurt boxes?
Maybe possible. So you could definitely see the pain in the characters' faces.
Related to this, I looked up on the wiki. Yeah, they actually have like a snippet from one of the Japanese like texts, or the legendary texts. That 2 years after the battle with Onslaught, Earth was restored, and a mysterious entity named Abyss shrouded the atmosphere of dark energy. Skip ahead a bit. A pirate named Ruby Heart discovers the energy, warned heroes and villains from the two camps that they were fighting amongst themselves, but together they could stop this new nemesis before the Earth and the universe is destroyed by Abyss's terrible power. So
that's so cool.
Ruby Heart is at like the root of it.
I had no idea.
Like, and she never returned.
Yeah, that sucks. Like I knew she's kind of important, but I didn't know because she was like, look, a new Capcom character, but that sucks that she never really did.
What do you mean?
With her.
She
got the rose costume.
She came back in Street Fighter 5. You don't remember that?
There was some acknowledgement at least.
Yeah, but whenever we talk about Street Fighter 5 costumes, it always see they still care about these friends. No, they don't.
There's Jin. He was in there too. Yeah,
Jin.
Cyber.
They care about getting your money.
Gutsman.
Gutsman.
But there's nothing before that. Like X-Men versus Street Fighter has like 0. It's just versus game, deal with it.
Yeah,
right?
even MVC 1
nothing.
might have like the smallest iota of something, but it very much like the one that finally actually had a story where they're trying to tell like, we're actually trying to tell a narrative with 2 different universes of characters outside of like Marvel 3-ish and MVCI, which actually gave it like an attempt.
Yeah.
3, I remember, had that comic that you could get, when Ultimate came out, they put the comic in the game itself.
Yeah.
But I remember when the first one came out, I was hunting that comic down. But then I finally read the comic and I was like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why are all the Capcom characters in the same universe?
It's not
and then
good.
Infinite, they like doubled down on that.
Yeah.
So the ultimate like doesn't make any sense is when I picked up like the Chinese manhwa on SVC Chaos. And that is like where you get the most story explanation. I think we might have discussed this before, but when you play the game just by itself, some of the stages are weird. They're like lonely and desolate. And then when you actually read the backstory and you find it, I'm not sure if the backstory is written in like the Xbox version in the instruction manual. Because that was the version I knew for a long time. But when you actually read about it, it's like, oh no, everyone's in purgatory or hell and they're all fighting out of it. And so the only people that exist are the fighters. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I wish they had a story sequence in the actual arcade game that explained that. Maybe it does in endings, but I don't recall because the translations are so bad for most of the dialogue.
And I think
they don't make much sense to begin with.
I think this is like one of the things that attaches people so much to KOF like lore and characters. Like, because I feel like people like KOF characters individually and their respective stories, even more than like Capcom fans. Like Capcom fans are like kind of hardcore about gameplay and stuff, but story they go, whatever. Yeah. Dude, and for like SNK and like BlazBlue or Guilty Gear, like they have such deep narratives throughout every single game. They actually go through arcs, they die, they come back. Like all this crazy stuff like really happens throughout all those KOFs in the 90s, that I think a lot more people are really attached to them because of it.
I think it's
that is absolutely a thing.
Yeah, I think it's because Bison was the bad guy and the only bad guy for the majority of the 90s. Yeah. Whereas during that same time frame, the bad guys were changing very quickly in KOF, right? It was like, oh, here's the new
You killed one and they're gone.
Yeah. And then when Street Fighter 3 came around, oh, here's a new bad guy. Like people were already like, pretty cool in Street Fighter 3 at that point. So it didn't really matter too much. But then KOF kept going with like even more villains and stuff. So it always was evolving.
I think it just took Capcom too long because when you think about that time period, it's like you have World Warrior, Street Fighter 2, Champion Edition, Hyper Fighting, right? Super, and then ST.
It's just the same stuff.
Yeah, it's literally the same stuff with pretty much the same endings as well. Nothing really changed. And then King of Fighters like 94, 95, 96, 97, like different arcs, like you said, like where you go from like the Rugal phase to Orochi, back to Rugal, back to Nest. So there was so much progress and people can like see how the characters develop. But Street Fighter is like, there wasn't no development until they branched away from Street Fighter 2.
And even
Ryu spent 5 years just walking away from the tournament, and that was all that we got at Ryu.
Or
he kept getting first place.
Yeah. Whereas in King of Fighters, like, it's not just... sorry, you can go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, but yeah, in King of Fighters, it's like, that was one of the things when I did the retrospective on that. I just discovered the fan base for KOF, and I said this in the retrospective, and I stand by it to this day. I think the KOF fan base is like the most positive fan base in the entire fighting game community because they're just very happy with their thing and they're very happy to share that thing. But they also kind of realize like, oh, we know that, it might not be your thing, but, we're going to like share and we're going to like slowly help you get into all this stuff. And they're very happy to like support each other. But when it comes to KOF, it's not just that they had different bosses and they had different story arcs in there, but also like the story arcs would kind of lead into each other. But every single character has their own thing that leads into other things in there. Like, I never would have cared about Athena at all just playing the games on my own, but I had to play through every single one of the character storylines when I was doing that retrospective. I was like, wait a minute, at the end of this part of Athena's story, she gets introduced to this character, then that character comes back in her ending in this game. They each have their own things going on in this, so they each have, like, it really is like, people have compared, since it's a big crossover game, people have kind of compared it to like, other crossovers, like, the Marvel stuff, everybody coming together in there. But when you play through all the storylines, it's like, oh, it kind of is, because everybody has their own film kind of happening with their own supporting cast of characters. So yeah, they do have like a massive world around all these characters that, as someone who grew up mostly a Capcom fan, was shocking to me, because I can't tell you any of Ryu's friends outside of Ken. I can't tell you who Chun-Li's boss is. I can't tell you, like, Guile knew Charlie. Gotcha. What's his kid's name? I have no idea.
Mini Guile.
Like, none of that. Yeah,
Mini Guile.
Little baby Guile. Do you know where that probably comes from? That KOF interconnectivity is probably the fact that in Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, everyone lived in the same town. Like everyone's grouped together.
Everyone's neighbors.
They weren't spread all over across the world. But when it did spread more across the world in KOF, it's like, well, but yeah, there's still a massive group of characters that all know each other and are familiar with each other. I know who that bad guy is. I know who that like henchman is. And then there's fringe characters, obviously, that like have a little bit less to do with that, and they get dropped or replaced or come back in.
Sure.
But I think it comes from that, because Dalsim doesn't really care what like Blanca's doing. No. Because they're a world apart. And when they do make those like team ups, some of them feel like they're almost always for laughs. Like Dan, Sakura, and Blanca, they're all kind of silly, so they're the silly group, and that's it.
To add to this is why it's like sometimes just meandering around the plot and just like jumping from character to character to character can be kind of weird, which is the NRS approach to it, where it's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna roster fill our story, so you're just gonna get a little snippet of everybody. It's like, that's cool. You do have an overarching plot, but there's no real like evolution. There's no character evolution really, other than the fact that we're all friends now. We're going to beat these guys' asses. And then you have the other kind of story which follows a character and like their evolution. It's like, even if it was not a world-ending event, like in Virtua Fighter, it would just be like Akira's strive to become better than anybody else by 10 years. It's just like you have to follow one character that meets other characters, and it's like their evolution. And that's what Tekken 8 is doing, seemingly. Because Tekken 8's story is about Jin. It's specifically like Jin. You only play as Jin, from what me and Justin played for like an hour. And if it's going to be about like Jin, it might be directly maybe some characters close to him, like maybe Lars or something.
Did you pick up on that thing that people were talking about, where there's a comparison video between what Tekken 7 looked like and what Tekken 8 looked like, goes through all the character intros? Like when they start around.
Oh yeah, you mean like the special intros?
Yeah, their special
Lars
intros.
And Jin has it.
Yeah. There's the ones, but just like if Jin's just by himself, like what's his quote when he starts off a match against a nobody?
Oh,
like,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I saw a video from like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it just shows what he says at the start of Tekken 7. And his animation's the same. He does the same pose, but it looks a lot better in Tekken 8. But he says in Tekken 7, power is everything.
Yeah.
And then in Tekken 8, he says,
isn't everything.
Is it everything? Yo! Character arcs, let's go!
And that's funny, because like to us, Jin was completely missing from Tekken 7 to actually make that jump. So we don't really see that. It's just implied.
Is Tekken, since we started talking about it, I feel it's like one of the least fractured. I mean, KOF to a point, considering KOF has even way more games, but Tekken just seems to have a general storyline that it kind of follows, and it's been following it for a while, versus Mortal Kombat, which has like some type of reboot or timeline reset or whatever it is, and then like Street Fighter, where the story doesn't matter for like a lot of the games, and then matters in this one and then doesn't. Just Tekken seems to be like on a surface level like pretty consistent.
Yeah, like as at least the beginning is like screw my dad, Kazuya and Heihachi, like screw my dad, throw him off a cliff, and then Tekken 3 is like there's a crazy in the middle of South America fighting god named Ogre, and we have to get him. And then Tekken 4, I actually don't know. Like, what the hell is Tekken?
Tekken 4 is Kazuya comes back from the dead. He wants revenge against Heihachi, and then Jin discovered he had the Delta. I'm sorry, I'm getting way too deep in the woods on that one. But yeah, that's the weird thing about Tekken, is that the biggest jump between them is 2-3.
Yes.
Because Tekken 1 ends with Heihachi is defeated, Kazuya is now in charge, but now he's been corrupted by the power of running the Mishima Zaibatsu, and now Heihachi is trying to take him down, but he meets this girl, and they kind of have a thing, and then Kazuya is killed. Jump ahead a bit into 3, and hey, you know that girl that was introduced in 2, and they kind of had a thing? Yeah, they had a kid, and now it's
Time
years
skip.
later. Yeah, time skip. That kid has grown up. So it's like there is a gap there, but even when they have the gap, there's like, well, it's still connected to that one because the lady had the kid and the devil gene thing from that last one, that's now in this one too, and that's the thing going on. But after that jump from 2 to 3, almost every single one happens directly after the next one. In fact,
like within
Tekken
a month
5
or some
begins,
shit.
Oh, Tekken 5 begins the second after Tekken 4 ends. Tekken 4 ends with Kazuya and Heihachi being knocked down as Devil Jin flies off. Tekken 5 begins with them sitting up after getting knocked down and Jaxes start raining down on them. It's like, holy, it's insane how they have like kept that thing going.
It's crazy how like
which has me wondering what Tekken 9 is going to be.
2 to 3, there's like literally like a 23-year time skip or some crazy shit, and then because Jin has to get born and grown up, right? So and then and also Nina has to go into cryo sleep and also have Steve, like all this crazy shit. And
that's the weirdest thing.
And then from like 4 or technically 3, possibly all the way till 8, it's possibly within a year. Like maybe like I'd argue it's maybe within only a year's time frame.
So in the Tekken 8 demo, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but there's a refresh me on the Tekken storyline feature that you can do. And I remember it does jump around after Tekken 3. It'll say 1 year later, and then it'll say there's a 2-year gap between one of them. I forget which one, but it's not more than that. But the biggest jump is from like Thorgi said. It's a pretty well produced little extra. The only problem with it is that its visuals are very messy and black and white, and they reuse a lot of animation frames. Like whenever it needs to show Kazuya being like violent, they just show him always leaping at the camera going yeah, and like that's it. They reuse it like 2 or 3 times.
What I understand, they actually took that from Tekken 6. It's the same cutscenes.
Yeah, Tekken 6 was the first time I remember them doing it. Yeah,
having a last time on Tekken.
Yeah, and it's like the same cutscenes.
Okay,
yeah.
I think these are redrawn for this because it goes past Tekken 6, obviously.
Like 7 has something, and like, you know, they don't talk about Ganryu's fever dream for Tag 2.
Right. That's a joke, though.
That is the story of Tekken Tag 2.
I never even, and I've played Tekken Tag 2.
Yeah, Tag 2's story is that Ganryu has a fever dream of all the Tekken characters fighting, and it's Tekken Tag Tournament 2.
That's like the spin-off, right? Like it's not like real. Yeah, it's just more of a side story thing.
Tag 2 is non-canon.
No, but it's canon that he had. It's canon that he had a dream.
But it's canon that I think the story is actually that it's Ganryu's dream.
So it's canon.
So it's technically
of all characters.
The events are canon.
Even the non-canon stuff has to be canon in a way in Tekken.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring this to KI a little bit because we're the KI podcast. Aside from 2013, which is, you know, kind of an odd reboot, like, you know, remake, whatever you want to call it. I have to give big ups to KI 1 and 2 because it's one of the few games that says this character won the first tournament. And because of those repercussions, this has now happened. And it again takes place minutes after the end of the first game.
Yeah.
Where Orchid beats the big boss, everything explodes, and like
time warps.
A bunch of Ultratech City gets ripped into the past, into like the mythological age of like warlords and barbarians and such. And the fact that anyone thought of that, like Rare, you know, they can make some decent stories here and there, but it's not like generally their focus in their games. But the fact that like we need some excuse to get weirdos in here, like barbarians and other monsters. How are we going to do that? Oh, just, you know, it releases a bunch of energies on a boss and then they just get brought back there. The fact that that didn't get continued, like KI 2013 is not KI3 in terms of story. It kind of makes me a little bummed out. I was like, oh, I wonder what would happen if they actually beat Gargos, because in KI 2013, I don't think there's, it's not really hinted. Well, maybe it's like left open. I forget what the ending of Shadow Lord's mode was, like when you actually beat Idol. I only did it. Gargos. I only actually beat it the one time when it first launched, so I forget. If
just know that like KI 2013 story is just completely canonical reboot, right? So it's the equivalent of like the original Tim Burton like Batmans compared to Christopher Nolan Batmans. Like we're retelling of these characters in a completely different way.
And Matt, when you were describing that Killer Instinct, how it's like minutes after they win who won the tournament, by the way?
Orchid,
right? Orchid wins tournament, and pretty much another thing happened. It just reminds me of the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 movies.
Literally, it happened.
Right, literally
seconds.
After Liu Kang wins, all of a sudden Shao Kahn comes out of nowhere. It's like, we're running it back, baby. That's it.
I'm convinced. I talked to this with Kenny when I did like a review of all the Mortal Kombat movies. That decision fucks over Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Like they had a rough time trying to make a movie based on that ending of the first one, because they can't just.
I think so.
Because they have to hit the ground running. So they have a bunch of people doing flips over the green screen within seconds of it starting. And anybody that did not see the first one, they could not be more. You're totally screwed. Johnny Cage dies. Who's Johnny Cage? Like it was made for those people. So the fact that they had to like pick up the pieces of that ending probably made that movie worse than it needed to be. Mortal Kombat itself, right? I think up until Deception, which introduced Shujinko and the Dragon King and the Conquest mode, I think that was all pretty nicely packaged. Like each one was individual. It fed on some stuff that happened in the last one. But once you get to Deception and the Conquest mode goes back in time and explains events that were happening during the first Mortal Kombat, that's why I'm like, this series is screwed forever. Like in terms of story, like it's too much, and they're gonna need to keep doing like reboots and things and just recycling old stuff, and that's kind of what's sort of happened. And even the reboots that we have now, they've all gotten, I think I can say it, pretty messed up since, with everything that happens.
It's wild to me, like how quickly after the first reboot that it was like, oh wow, yeah, we kind of have already gotten us to a point where we need to reboot it again. And it's been long enough that we can talk about spoilers for MK1, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
But like at the end of that one, they already my big problems with MK1 storyline is that it's building up this new world. I'm like, that's really fascinating. Like, I want to see all this new stuff that's going.
Me too.
And then it goes, all the realities are merging together, and like you got the alternate reality versions, and that stuff is cool. It's very cool as its own thing, but I was also like, but what is happening to weren't we building a thing over here?
No.
And
it's
I kind of
it's over. Throw it out.
They literally like set up that like the thing that we were setting up before is about to be rendered null and void by Psycho Havoc at the end of it as well. Like also the fact that like whatever you were building up, like Havoc in our crazy DLC expansion that comes in the future, is gonna throw a wrench into the whole thing anyway.
Yeah. Like, so don't get invested quite yet. Like wait a bit, because you don't know what we're going to be doing, because it could be big stuff.
I do almost have to wonder if everybody keeps saying that multiverses are the new thing right now, but it's like it really is only Spider-Verse that's been the success. All the other multiverse things people have attempted haven't really done all that well.
Like it's already collapsed.
It's already collapsed under its own weight. Yeah. But I have to wonder if maybe someone at Warner Brothers came to them, because it kind of comes like out of nowhere in that story. This whole multiverse thing, I almost have to wonder if someone at Warner Brothers came in there while they were making the story and went, you got to fit multiverses in here. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. All the kids love alternate realities now. You got to do that.
It's the current trend right now, especially with Warner Brothers. Like, I think it all started with like the What Ifs, right? The What Ifs Marvel series on Disney Plus. That's kind of what started the whole, hey, let's just do multiverse everything. right? And yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
When you think about it, versus games almost kind of started it in terms of like if we're going to keep on video games, like
a little
Marvel
bit,
versus Capcom or
but they didn't go
Fighters
hard
Mega
into
Mix.
But they didn't go really hard. Like, hey, let's just have this story, and then all of a sudden, let's just mix it up completely. With going to a multiverse route.
To give them a little bit of credit, it was the hypest part of the game. Right?
It was. It absolutely was.
The rest of the game is setting up this story where it's like, okay, it's like kind of interesting. They sort of just like ignore the Tarkat stuff, which was funny. Like by the end of it, that's so unimportant that it's like, oh, who cares? It's gone.
No one cares about the disease anymore.
But by the time we get to it, it's like, oh, we have all these origin backstories from Melina, why Kenshi's eyeballs got stabbed out. Like all of this stuff happens that sets up our characters where it's like, oh, okay, we're reestablishing our characters of the universe. Their origin stories are the exact fucking same. Like they're the same shit as they were before. We're just being reestablished, and then they, introduce a new element that's way hyper than the entire thing. Where it's like, oh, this is actually fucking bonkers. I kind of love this.
Yeah, and even in MK9 story mode, it was like Cabal is not a member of the Black Dragon. He was a cop friend of Strikers, like on his force, and he never joined them until much later. But MK3's storyline kind of says differently, and they did little tweaks like that in MK9s, and now MK1 did that same thing sort of again.
But then in MK11, you get to see him, his past self, before he got burned, and he was working with the Black Dragons. Like,
wait,
this is the same timeline, and you're already Remember, there's that moment where they get thrown into like.
Was he reformed? Like, was he working for the Black Dragon, then became a cop?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Might have been working for the Black Dragons, then became a cop, then went back to the Black Dragons. Sure, let's go with that.
Pick a side!
Sure.
That's the crazy part about Mortal Kombat's story is that, like, it's been technically rebooted, like, and reinvented itself in slightly different ways, like 3 times, right? Is it a total of 3 times, or is it only 2?
So, like I said, in Deception, they kind of start saying different stuff. Like, oh, this is why that happened, and this. And Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero also, like, starts to recontextualize things. Those aren't hard reboots, but I'd say the first one was MK9. Yeah.
Probably MK9. And then, obviously,
hard changes.
MKX is just like MK4's story again. And then MK...
But it did do the time jump, so a lot of things changed regardless.
It's true. MK11 tries to do this crazy, like, past to future stuff, which is already kind of multiversy in a certain way. Yeah. And now MK1, okay, we're retelling the story of all the PS2 games. It's just Deception, Deadly Alliance, Armageddon. It's all that in one game specifically. So it's like, wow, we're just like we went forward to the back, and then we're caught up again. Now we're back at the part where we're at Mortal Kombat 9 again now for the next MK, which is weird.
Yeah, let's remake MK9. You know what? I just realized though, I'll give them a pass. Is that you've already established in game 1, there's portals, there's alternate dimensions, there's other realms. I'm like, you have to play into that stuff, and it's going to get messy. Imagine if in Street Fighter 7 a portal just opens up.
And then you go to fight Sub-Zero afterwards.
No, but like maybe Sub-Zero, but like a rich playboy Ryu. You know what I mean?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like a Darkstalker popped through. I was like, oh,
yeah, like the foot of Turok comes out of a portal. Some weird shit, and that's the cut to black hard credits.
That's what I'm saying.
Just saying that, like, Street Fighter can't, like, without turning a lot of heads, can't really just do that stuff. It's grounded, as crazy as that is to say, in martial arts world, but it's
street level.
Well, it's also the power. Thank you. The power levels are not that crazy compared to like Mortal Kombat. We got like Psycho Power and everything. Does it?
I gotta throw this out there. I gotta throw this out there. Remember, in Street Fighter V, when they introduced Rose, her storyline ends with some apocalypse is coming. I have to send a message to myself back in time, the way back to the Alpha games, and I screamed, "Don't do that!" People have been wanting Street Fighter to advance and actually go past Bison for the longest time.
They did.
If you come in here and just go like, "We're going back to the Alpha games," and we're gonna redo the whole thing again. people would be done. They would be out. Like, the smartest thing Street Fighter did was just jumping ahead. Like, there isn't even really a story in Street Fighter 6, but Ryu has a beard. There's some gray in Kin's temples. That's all we need.
Yeah. Yeah,
Bison's nowhere to be seen.
We actually see 40-year-old versions of the main cast that has been around for like 90 years or some shit now, you know?
Yes.
Like this, until it gets expanded upon, maybe with more stuff in the future. Like the story of Street Fighter 6 is very low stakes by comparison. It's these two countries or a few countries, a coalition. There's a tournament. Money is involved. That's kind of it, right? Ken and JP somewhere in there.
Yeah, I've been theorizing that they have a actual story mode plan, because World Tour mode is not a story mode. World Tour mode is the greatest training mode of all time.
Yes.
Because all it is it takes people who don't know how to play fighting games and go, you know what, don't stand in the white grid and just have a character jump at you 5 times till you learn uppercuts. No, walk around the world, do your things, and, oh, hey, this character jumps at you a whole lot. Maybe we taught you a thing earlier that you should know how to do. Like, it's just a training mode, and it's brilliant how it does it. But when it comes to story mode, like, the story of World Tour mode literally ends with JP laughing and saying, none of this mattered. It's like, wow, just gonna literally how it ends. And it's like, wow, just gonna tell it to us to our face. Okay. But like in arcade mode.
And then you become his friend.
Yeah. But in arcade mode, multiple arcade endings, like Guile's arcade mode ends with him saying, maybe I should check out this Nashal thing. And like Ken's story mode doesn't end. Dhalsim's ending has him going like, I sense the Satsui no Hado out there somewhere. It's like, you have an actual story mode planned. It's coming.
I think so, like, because the story of the World Tour story, as it were, is just like your created character's story.
Yes.
And their rivalry with Bosch. That's it. But that has very little bearing on the general thing that's going on with the Street Fighter characters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just kind of like supporting you. One pops in for a bit, helps you out, blah, blah, blah. It's like, again, it always comes back to Deception's Conquest mode, because it does really, because you play as a new character in that, not, Sub-Zero or Scorpion.
Yeah, but I was saying, if you think about World Tour mode and you think about your created characters, like story, the filler story, it makes you think, damn, these Street Fighter characters are very nice people, because they all want to keep teaching me how to be like them.
They're all friends. Very nice.
They're super nice.
Yeah.
Even Jury, while not doing it in a nice way, still gives you the same lessons.
She's like, you want me to teach you? All right, fine. like that type of attitude.
Even JP's like, I'll teach you. Sure, whatever.
It does make you realize, when we're talking about like MK and Street Fighter, how impressive it is that Tekken's Guinness World Record is the way it is for a sequential story. They never went back in time. Mm-hmm. They never, went through a portal to another universe or something. The closest we got was the weird Tekken tag stuff, potentially, right? Because that's just like odd and in between, or Tekken, the free-to-play one. Who knows if that's story related. But still, like, that's actually really impressive that they never deviated, right? It's kind of confusing now, because for the past 20 years, we've crammed like a few years into like 20 years or something like that. But, so do the Simpsons, so it's really no issue.
Yeah, Simpsons.
Well, Max, don't jinx it though. You know what I mean?
There should be like a gigantic Simpsons fighting game franchise where like there's a story mode every time. We're talking about Alpha a little bit, and I was just thinking, while I love his sprite, Alpha going back and saying, no, Bison's here too, I always kind of felt was like a mistake. Like, that Bison could be in there, but he not be the center bad guy. I'd like Sagat should have still been the bad guy at that point. Yeah,
that makes sense.
And keep Bison a Street Fighter 2.
Alpha 3 is really the only one that says, like, Bison's the villain, because Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 were meant to be, like, this is the link between, like, because you play through Alpha 1 and Sagat meets Bison for the first time. And it's like, oh, that's how he joined Shaolu. And then, like, you have Chun-Li introducing, like, yeah, he killed my father, I'm after this guy Bison. You got Charlie, and you see Charlie dying to Bison. Alpha 3 is the first one that was the one that was actually like, yeah, Bison's doing stuff.
Psycho
but Alpha
Drive.
1 and Alpha 2 was kind of interesting that they were actually just trying to link 1 to 2.
Was it in Alpha 1 and 2 where your boss was just whatever character that you have some story with? It was never always Bison, right?
Alpha 2 is Bison.
Oh, yeah.
Alpha 2 is Bison.
Alpha 2 is Bison, I
but
believe.
1 is not.
Well, Bison
I think some characters.
Some characters.
Some characters, it's Bison. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ryu fights Sagat in Alpha 1.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I always
Ryu
thought
fights Sagat, Adon fights Sagat, yeah.
Bison's
Yeah,
definitely the
I
boss for Rose in Alpha 1.
Yeah, I prefer that almost, because when I first read that in a gaming magazine like EGM it'll say everyone has like a different boss, or not everyone, but like lots of characters have different bosses depending on their storyline. I was like, that's awesome. But
that's
there's
like
still
Second
no
Impact.
Yeah, wait, is it?
Yeah, Second Impact, you fight Gil before the last boss.
Really?
Yes, you're right. Oh man, forgot about that.
Yeah, you fight Gil before the last boss. So if you're Yun, you fight Yang.
Oh yeah,
So
they do
only in
rival
Second
fights.
Impact.
Yeah, your
King and
rival
Ryu
fight is your
each
boss
other.
fight. But it's a normal fight, so you don't really get that feeling of, oh, this is a boss.
But only in Second Impact. Was that in New Generation?
Yeah, New Generation, you fight
No,
Gil
New
last
Generation.
level.
Gil's the last boss.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, I always remember fighting Gil at the end of New Generation.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's weird that there's these things you tend to forget. Like Capcom was trying to do like a neat thing here or two with story wise in the games or whatever. Let's talk about Bloody Roar. So
right, you tell me.
We come back to it as all things do.
my headcanon was this: the first 3 games have a simple, easy to understand story. But then when they made Primal Fury on the GameCube, they went nuts with a crazy story out of nowhere.
Primal Fury, to me, kind of feels like when you're watching an anime, but then they have a movie tie-in. So the characters from the main series are there, but it can't tie into the actual story at all. And you're kind of like, when does this actually fit into the story? Like, there's just this one-time guy who pops up for this thing to fight them, and now we're back to the regular thing.
So when you say regular thing, like, did the story go back? Because I always kind of think like, oh, for the GameCube version, we have to do something different. So let's create this like crazy country where they love zoanthropes, and there's like a temple, and like there's this weird shit going on. But that was never mentioned, not once in the first 3 games. There was always just like a corporation. They're like, let's have people that can turn into animals fight in a tournament. That's cool. And that was basically it. But like for Primal Fury, what you just described, and then they go back, because all I remember is that lobster girl from Primal Rage 4. Lobster girl.
No, 4. Okay, all right. Now I'm remembering it. It's coming back. I gotta get this right, because the Bloody Roar fans will get mad at you if you get this stuff wrong. In 1 and 2 are kind of connected. They follow each other. But then 3, they introduce the Unborn, which is like the devil of zoanthropes.
Yeah, Zion.
And then it goes off to Primal Fury, which is its own thing. But then 4 is that Gaia, the Earth's... Oh, God, I sound like a madman. Gaia, the wheel of the planet, needs its own champion, so it clones the Unborn and puts that into Lobster Girl. And it's like, why, if you need a champion, would you clone the villain? Because sure enough, she turns evil at the end. Like, who saw that coming? And that's the dragon guy. The dragon guy is trying to defend Gaia, but it's like, you already have a champion in the dragon guy, and he apparently has the power to one-shot you. I don't know why you need Lobster Girl in here. But the actual official canonical ending of that game is Lobster Girls. And I always kept thinking she should be like a spider or something, because she's got the one long pincer arm. And I'm like, if you ever bring her back, just give her like 8 of those on her back. Like, you could maybe make that work.
She could look way cooler that way, yeah.
Yeah. But the official canon ending is that she turns evil, but then like, oh God, I think Yoon comes up and punches her and like knocks the evil Unborn out of her, because she kills the Unborn guy from the 3rd game, so he's dead. This is an amazing first impression I'm making on everybody who's never met me before. Then Yoon comes up, punches Lobster Girl after she gets possessed by the Unborn, knocks it out of her, and then she stabs the big, we had 5 minutes to make this effect before the game goes out, giant Unborn cloud, and kills it, and then everybody stands around laughing.
What?
So, what were we talking about?
Do you know what makes this, like, your description is as good as it can possibly be, right? But I think a big factor of this is because in the first Bloody Roar game, I think there's still images for your ending, right? Like, just like a picture of your character doing something maybe. And let's just say the second one does that. And I think the third one, they start, Bloody Roar PS2.
Third one is still images too.
Still images. Then they start doing anime cutscenes for Primal Fury. Then they got rid of those, but remade them to be like American appealing CGI clips. And then for Bloody Xboxified them, thank you. And then they complicate things because in Bloody Roar 4, they're like, let's do in-game, in-engine 3D cutscenes.
It was weird.
And it was weird because all this stuff Thorgi's saying is happening with like always in the same background of the dragon guy, and they're talking to Lobster Girl, and everyone's saying the same generic shit, and it's so... I tried to watch all these cutscenes of the story of Bloody Roar 4, and like, you cannot make heads or tails of it, and like you did the best possible job because all that stuff I'm like, yeah, that sounds vaguely correct because it's done in such a bad way in Bloody Roar 4, unfortunately.
It just sounds so confusing.
Yeah, it does. I think there's some stuff there worth salvaging when it's like, oh, there's a evil corporation that's saying let's put all these animal people together to fight. That's good. That's a basic setup. Build from there, like, and then it just kind of went off the rails after Primal Fury, I think. Unfortunately,
yeah, that just didn't make any sense to me. You said Lobster Girl, baby fused with Lobster Girl. Somebody punches baby out of Lobster Girl's stomach, and becomes big dark Cloud, and somehow Cloud disappears, and everyone laughs. That is literally what I heard.
Close enough.
I was gonna say one of my favorite tropes of some lesser games, like ones that, you know, not big franchises, but it's like take people from different time periods and give them a second chance at life.
Oh yeah, how many did that? Because I can think of 2 right off the bat.
Yeah, Eternal Champions did that, where everyone was on the moment of their death, like mid falling. And they get plucked out of nowhere, and the Eternal Champion goes, "Let's do it, boys."
Was that the requirement that they have to be about to die from falling?
Yeah, not always falling, but it's like I'm about to be shot. I'm about to be shot.
Everybody,
but I say fall.
Slipped
I say
on a
falling
banana
down the stairs. I just stubbed my toe and like hit my head on something. But there's that. I think World Heroes is something similar.
Thrill Kill.
World Heroes was time travel.
Thrill Kill.
Yeah. Thrill Kill's about like people that have like died or are crazy, going to hell, and they have to like fight in purgatory or some weird shit.
Max is the Thrill Kill expert of the group.
I'd probably played it and researched it the most many years ago.
There's that.
Wasn't Time Killers also the same premise?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think Pray for Death, which is a DOS fighting game that looked like KI, also had that. But I just think that's, especially, can you build off that? No, but if you're going to be a one-off game, sure. Like, that makes
one-off
sense.
games can,
Yeah, because there's a lot of stakes there, but there's no like repercussions of that. Like, okay, well, I won. I get to live my life.
I gotta ask Thorgi, since you've been like knee deep in these for how many years have you been making YouTube videos on fighting game lore stuff?
Let's see. I think 3-4 years, 3.5, something like that.
So you got some full high school level education history here. 4 years, you know.
I could teach a course, huh? Yeah.
So I have to ask. There's probably 2 different questions, and the first one is, which is the best of all the ones that have like a story that are trying to present a narrative with its characters and an overarching plot that either evolves and moves? Which one's like the best and most cohesive in your opinion? But also, which one is your personal favorite? Because you probably have the most knowledge and backstory of all these, and you definitely have to have one that you're like, oh, this one's pretty sick.
Okay, in terms of, we haven't actually done this one. We're planning on doing this one next year, but unless I discover something just horrendous with it, we all make fun of Tekken. But the fact that Tekken actually like has a continuity that actually continues along, as stupid as it is, I can't help but like really enjoy it because I've stuck with these characters. Like in Tekken 7, when you're in the volcano and Kazuya punches Heihachi, and then all of a sudden you get a flash from Tekken 4 pop up of him screaming, I'll take back everything.
That's like Metal Gear shit
oh my gosh.
at that point.
Yeah, it is. It's Metal Gear shit. It's like, I kind of feel like I have to give that one points for just the fact that they recognize their lore and they have kept it going. But when it comes to my personal favorite, I think I might have to say KOF. And I was not a KOF fan until I started doing that retrospective. And I went, there's so much here, but also like they care about, which the fact that like every character kind of gets something. No character is really gone forever in KOF. They still get remembered in some way. And even the characters that I don't like, I'll eventually find something through playing through one of their arcade endings that makes me go, I kind of dig this about them. Like, when I first played KOF 14, because that was the first time that I got introduced to KOF, I had seen it before, never played it, but when KOF 14 came out, I was like, I'm going to finally check this out. There were a lot of characters in there that I enjoyed, but like, man, I'm going to like shoot myself in the foot on this one, but like Sylvie Paula Paula, I looked at her and went, oh God, no to this character, know all about this. But then when doing the retrospective, and I had to read through the mangas, I was like, oh, she's actually not, I kind of like Sylvie now. Like, I'm not going to put her in my top 10 or 20 or, I don't know, 30, but like, I'm cool with her now. Like, and the fact that somebody can actually like think through their lore enough to make me say that about even the weirdest character, I gotta respect KOF for that. And that's kind of been like SNK's, their goal from their creation. And I had to write this guy's name down because I'm the worst with names, so I actually made myself a cheat sheet here. Takashi Nishiyama was the guy who really started up all the fighting games over at KOF. And he, started up Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, King of Fighters. And he always made it clear from day one, I want lore to be important. I want the story to actually be important. Like, he's also one of the guys who helped to create Street Fighter 1, and he has said that
name looked familiar. Yeah, I had to look it up. He's one of the Capcom guys that jumped ship around like Street Fighter 1 and 2 to SNK.
Yep, and then he went over there and made Fatal Fury. He made Art Fighting, made all their different things, made the Rumblefish. Actually, he just made the studio that made Rumblefish, but... what the hell was I saying a second ago? Oh yeah, but when he was making Street Fighter 1, he has even said, like, he wrote out backstories and in-depth backstories for every single character. And none of that could be put into the game. But like when he got over to SNK and they're like, okay, you got a little bit more freedom, you can do some stuff here. He actually decided to start putting story in there. And like they made flyers for Fatal Fury when it first came out. And it was a comic strip that they sent to all the arcades to hang up. And it was the backstory of Terry Bogard and Geese. So he's kind of the guy who invented the idea of lore in fighting games. Yeah. So you can see that in all of SNK's games, that they all want to have some kind of big continuous story.
And like that's like, just if you just go by Fatal Fury, like there's a ton of it. Maybe not in like, I don't know, special, because it's like a, special edition and blah, blah, blah. But like once you get into like Fatal Fury 3 and Real Bout, like there's tons of cutscenes of just like, it's silly. Cheng showing up in a helicopter and Terry going, by the hairs of my chingy Cheng, it's Cheng. You're like, oh my God. Okay, sure. Whatever, Terry. But it's all there. Yeah. It's all there.
I've always wondered if the SNK guys from Japan saw what their stuff got translated to in English. Like, would they be stunned or would they be proud?
Because there's like I've theorized, I did in a recent video, like there's some things that are like absolutely some American said like I want to put my own personal joke or reference in there that I find funny, and then maybe some other characters not so much, but certainly I think it's a game per game basis. Maybe not Fatal Fury 1, but certainly 2 and 3 and onwards and stuff. But we could go around the okay, well, your personal favorite's KOF, you're saying, right?
I'd say so, yeah.
So why don't we go around the rest of us? Max, what do you think is the easiest to follow versus your favorite?
God.
Favorite's hard, huh?
That is actually hard, but yeah, I was saying it earlier how Tekken gets like mega props. I keep thinking back to, as much as people really hated Tekken 7's story because of the funky narrator / narrative of it, yeah, that did suck. But dude, like the story mode drops you in as either Kazuya or Heihachi when you're fighting off all the Jack 5s from that nutty ass Tekken 5 intro, and you literally like live it. Now you're just beating up Jacks as you're trying to defend with your dad, and you relive that. I thought that was so sick because it was like a flashback. I'm like, yeah, I love this. I think this is incredibly cool. And then it meanders around like, you know, the weird melodramatic anime nonsense like Tekken, like what is it, Bloodlines kind of has, where like all the talking and stuff between like the Alyssa fights, and it's like, oh, this is so shitty. But then it does something amazing, and then Akuma fights fucking Heihachi. It's like, wow, okay, this is so cool. Again, I have to appreciate Tekken for what it does story-wise, but I mean, I think my personal favorite's definitely like MK, just because like Mortal Kombat, like I thoroughly enjoy every single time we get a story mode from like NRS. They're not the most cohesive things, but in terms of just like a narrative that feels inclusive with most characters, and they're trying to like get shit done. They're trying to like make a big 6-hour movie out of this. It's like, I kind of appreciate that. And other fighting games have tried to do it to, you know, varying degrees of success, or none of them. So that's impressive that NRS is able to still produce something that is like at least cohesive. And while MK1 we're kind of critical of, dude, we were like jumping up and down and hooting and hollering when female Sub-Zero showed up, or I'm sorry, like Smoke Sonya or some weird shit like
Boob
Smonya.
Cybot.
Yeah, Boob Cybot. Yeah. We were having a great time.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised. If you had asked me around MK9, MK10, I probably would have said my personal favorite was MK. But I think like, you know, 2 other games past that, and just seeing like, you know, some storylines get dropped, some characters get de-emphasized, and it being kind of, we're at this weird spot with it right now where it's kind of fractured and we don't know where they're going with it. I'm not so sure it'd be my favorite one anymore. Like specifically for me, when I really think about it, it's like, I love just Fatal Fury, just following Fatal Fury. Because if you put in all the KOF stuff, it's just a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But just Geese is the most evil person ever made. And he's not like super powered. He's not like Bison or Shao Kahn, but he's just so fucking evil. And that's kind of it. And just Terry, I want to avenge my father.
Yeah, clean up these streets, motherfucker.
Clean up these streets, keep it all in one general city, or, you know, when it gets blown up and becomes Second South, whatever, pocket dimensions. But just that, and how all of the characters know each other, and then the time jump to Garo, that's kind of the cherry on top of the sundae. Like, that was handled so well versus, you know, Street Fighter 2, then jumping to Street Fighter 3.
Yeah.
And then you feel like there's way less continuity there. Like, my personal favorite is kind of Fatal Fury. But in terms of the most consistently told and easiest to follow, like, I think it's Tekken easily, where they, you know, they balance pushing it forward while also keeping it in line with things before as much as they can. Like, I think almost every franchise has some sort of issue with that, where it's, or they don't have a lot of story to go depending on the game, like Street Fighter 5, or it's handled not that great, like Street Fighter 5.
Unfortunately,
yeah, Tekken. Yeah. What about you, Justin?
You know, it has to be Tekken.
Mace the Dark Age. Gotcha.
Right. Imagine.
Mace the Dark Age.
I feel like it has to be Tekken just because they really make family drama really crazy. And I think I love it. I think the first time going through Tekken and then seeing the Tekken 4 arcade intro, and you see Kazuya just come back in that literally that like cinematic that they play in the arcade intro, and Heihachi's like, oh my god, he's still alive. It's amazing there. And then they continue that with like Tekken 5, where you see Raven just saying Heihachi Mishima is dead, and then he comes back to life, right? It's hype. And then you obviously like fast forward, like Max was saying, Tekken 7, they brought Akuma in. I'm like, how the hell did you bring Akuma in? And like, this is amazing. It's like crazy because I can't think of another fighting game that really like added another character from a different franchise as part of like the story. Like, he's pretty much like like a hitman. Like, yo, go get Heihachi after this, right? Type of thing. And then you have Tekken 8, which is so interesting to me. Like, I'm dying to play the rest of the story mode because I want to know what's up with Reina. I want to know like
Yeah.
What is she? Is she like somehow like Heihachi incarnate or whatever, or like, and then you have Kuma for some reason knowing Heihachi's move as well too.
He's Heihachi. Heihachi's soul is in Kuma. We've seen it confirmed in his trailer.
and then you have Harada just be like, yeah, Heihachi's dead. I'm like in my head, I'm like, so you're telling me he's not coming back to life, like how you brought these other characters back to life? I'm just so curious on how they're going to keep Tekken 8 continuing, like for, let's say, eventually like Tekken 9, like what's going to be the possible theory that you can think about for Tekken 9, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just so curious about it because we only played an hour of it, and you could kind of guess on certain things because of the certain stages you play on. Reina's like end win quote is like she's literally sitting on a throne. So I'm just so curious on like what's gonna happen because of that.
Yeah, and do you find Tekken is also like the most easiest to digest story? Like you said, it's your favorite, but do you feel it's like, yeah, okay.
I think it's very easy to understand. I mean, if you think about Street Fighter, I feel like most of the time people just didn't even know which Street Fighter is the right start. Like which one is 3? Is 3 the latest? Is 2 the latest? Is 4? Like, you know, like everything was so confusing with the numbers of like Street Fighter 1 to like 6. It's like, so where are we? Like, what's the right number? It's like when Star Wars first came out in theaters, and for some reason we start with Star Wars Episode 4 and not Episode 1.
Yeah.
So like as growing up, I'm like, I'm so confused, and I'm a Capcom fanboy, so I'm like, like where am I?
Just to reiterate how confusing that is, you start here in the middle with like Street Fighter 2, right? And now we're gonna go back to Alpha. Okay, but the next game comes up, we're way over here now. All right, then we're gonna go back to Street Fighter 4, which puts us back here, back to Street Fighter 2, and now we're in Street Fighter 5, which is a little bit here, a little bit more, and now we're gonna go to Street Fighter 6, which is way ahead of that one that was before. So it's like, holy shit, where are we?
The desire from Capcom, probably Capcom marketing people, but Capcom in general, be like, we want 4 to bring back the spirit of 2, therefore we're not going to push it forward, is kind of what screwed everything up. Because I'll give you a prequel game. I'll give you one prequel game. That makes sense. Oh, let's tell a little bit of story before Street Fighter 2. Okay, that's fine. But then you do that like 3-4 times later on. It gets a little much.
And it feels like a lot of that problem also comes from the story and the lore, because with 4, it was very clearly, it's like, okay, 3 scared people away. We got to bring them back. Get back all the World Warriors. It's set right after 2. That's all you got to know. That's it. You don't need to know anything about Gil or the Illuminati or any of that stuff. But the plot of the story of 5 is the downfall of Bison, and it feels like that's why we still couldn't move ahead. They were like, well, why isn't Bison in Street Fighter 3? We got to explain what happens to him. I was like, I got news for you. Street Fighter fans really do care about these characters. They do like these characters.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily need to know what happened to Bison. We don't really
Ken
need
shot
to know
him. That's it. Ken shot him in the head.
Bang!
Moving on. It was awesome. He got the prize money, went home to Eliza. Nothing bad ever happened.
So I have with that being said, we have to ask the next completely polar opposite question, which is the worst one, which is like the one that is like, oh god, this is just rough and bad. I think I have a personal in my head, but I'm curious what you feel, Thorgi. Without, you are, by the way, you're on Triple KO. We're completely offering you a blanket protection against the fan base. You're protected. Whoever you're gonna say, whatever game you're gonna say something bad about, you're cool. We'll cover you, bro.
Are we talking least favorite or hardest to understand?
Both.
Or least comprehensive?
Let's just put it together.
Because least comprehensive is easily BlazBlue. It's not even up for debate. Like, that's not the hardest in fighting games. That's the hardest, period. Like, Kingdom Hearts fans look at the lore of BlazBlue and their ears start smoking. Like, they don't, like I said, even the people whose job it is to understand this stuff, like, we don't actually know that part there. It's in some book that never got translated, but yeah. BlazBlue, when I was putting that retrospective together, people kept warning me, there's a lot of rewrites. And as I was going through each of the games and each of the story modes, I was like, there doesn't really seem to be many rewrites. Like, there's only like once that they go back and say this thing that happened didn't actually happen. But that seems to be it. But the more I played, the more I realized, that's not what you meant by rewrites. What you meant is that in the last game, this happened. That caused this thing, and that caused this thing. But the more I go on, it's like, well, yeah, that did happen, but when A was happening, B was also happening, and C was also happening. And in the past, D happened. And then in alternate reality, E happened, and they all happened at the same time, and that's why G happened. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, you get into BlazBlue, and you have to understand quantum physics, and I'm not joking about that. Like, literally, Schrodinger's cat is a plot point that defines a large point of the story of BlazBlue. And I don't know if I could possibly sum up for, like, everybody says Guilty Gear is crazy. Guilty Gear doesn't get crazy until you get to like Jacko and Eno and what they're doing. Up until then, it's just, there's a 100-year-long war against magical robots. That's it, done, you're good. That's it. But BlazBlue is impossible. In the very first game, there's a god firing a laser from space that is meant to kill one person so that it resets the timeline. Why does that reset the timeline? Find out in game 4. And then you need to know like the mangas and the light novels and the visual novels and all these things. And yeah, it's weird. I like a lot of the characters in BlazBlue. I really do. Like, I think that Ragna is a fun character, although that's mostly Patrick Seitz's performance of him. But there's a lot of characters I think are fun in there. But I have to enjoy them as their own individual thing. I cannot enjoy them as the story. When we did the BlazBlue retrospective, normally when we do the retrospectives, I do the development of the game, the mechanics of the game, and the story of the game. Then we move on to the next game, and we do the development, the mechanics, the story of it. Then we move on to the next game. BlazBlue, I had to take all the story out and go, it's going to be its own video. And the video on the making of the BlazBlue games and the mechanics and how you play, that came out to like somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I was like, all right, the story is going to be like 1 hour. It was over 2. But the weird thing is that video right now is getting like 50% more views than the one about the development and the story. And about the development and the mechanics and like the history of the actual games themselves. And I think it's just because so many people are like, yeah, what the hell is this story? Like, if I tell you what the story of Street Fighter is, everybody knows it. It's somehow Bison has returned. That's it. But nobody knows the story of this thing. So I think that it's one of those that even the fan base is confused about. When you have diehard fans of a thing and even they don't know what it is,
that's rough, bro.
It's got to be the worst.
Yeah.
So does it ever intertwine where it's like, does it all come back to that man or something?
Oh, you mean like with, yes.
It does?
Yeah. There, or not, oh, sorry, do you mean specifically that man from Guilty Gear? Or
like
is
that
there
man, like a weird tandem where it's like somehow in an alternate reality it connects to Guilty Gear, Team Blue, Team Red?
No, although there is in both Guilty Gear and BlazBlue an alternate reality made of pure energy. And so in my head, I do have like, they're connected. They're other
connected.
ends, and in the middle is that weird reality thing. But there is a that man style character in BlazBlue, but he's so much worse than he is in Guilty Gear. I don't mean in terms of like evil. I mean in terms of like, okay, what are you? How are you connected to this? You did that thing? You've been living 1,000 lifetimes and you've messed things up on oh God, okay, no. Like, that man is like, he was a scientist friend and now he turned evil and now he's good. Done. Yeah. Move on. That's it. Yeah. I realize I must sound like a crazy person on this video right now.
Dude, you're filling in the gaps that we never will jump.
Yeah, just think about it. You got people see that you got the passion.
Yeah, no, that's important.
I'm screaming at you from the island as you guys safely float away. It's like, no, I must remain here on Anime Bullshit Island. I cannot leave.
What is your least favorite, Justin?
Man, I think obviously we talked about how great Tekken is, King of Fighter is, and everything. And I am a Capcom fanboy, but I wish there was just more of just Marvel vs. Capcom. I feel like Marvel vs. Capcom just doesn't have anything really, and when they try to do something with MVCI for the first time with like an actual story mode,
not great.
Yeah, it's just not great. And I'm like, man, I'm really sad because I was really hyped for the story mode because I love like seeing crossovers happen and like these type of collabs. So I'm just so curious on how like these characters are going to work together. Like when you first see like X-Men or Street Fighter, right? You see Ryu and Cyclops like shake hands.
Yeah.
The whole time I'm like, I want to see like the development of the friendship, like how they're gonna fight with each other and everything. I always wanted something like that, and you don't really see it as much, right? You see, you see like the cutscene, right? You see the cutscenes and everything.
The best story mode thing I can give you for Marvel vs. Capcom is all those cinematic trailers for Vanilla Marvel 3. You just splice them together.
But that's the best. Vanilla Marvel 3 like intro with like the two two characters they're fighting against each other and everything.
Yeah.
That's still like the hypest intro, and it makes me want to see more of that. Like I want to see like actual like what happens after that. Like what kind of fights, who won the fights and everything. And you don't really get to see that much compared to like the other games that we've been talking about.
Hindsight's 2020, of course, but do you know, like, because I'm hearing what you're saying, I was like, yeah, no, I'd like to see those interactions too. I don't think in a cinematic story mode, when you have so many characters and you're already establishing like there's 2 universes or whatever it is, that in a cinematic 4-hour story mode, however long MCI's is, I don't think you can like do that too much justice. But if you did it in like a comic book, like a motion comic book style or visual novel even, where there's a lot of character actions and you're going around like a world map, taking out like different like bad guys or whatever it is, like some other way to get across all those interactions and like dialogue, like well-written dialogue between like Hulk and Blanca or Ryu and Cyclops. I think that's the best way you can do that. If it's done in some sort of, like motion comic book style where pages turn.
Yeah,
and you get a lot of the drama, because I'm thinking about when there's a big cataclysmic event in comics, like a big Marvel comic event, right? It's like 12 issues.
Yeah.
Roughly 20 pages.
They need more time.
You need more time. Exactly. But it can be done.
But to give credit to MVCI, small credit, okay, just give me a second. I know I'm the stand of this game.
Don't worry about it.
The plot's cool.
I like the game too.
Like the plot of MVCI is cool, that like digital creations like come together to make some big thing that's taking over the universes and merging them together, where it's like, half Wakanda, half like Monster Hunter. I'm like, wow, dude, yeah, Ultron and Sigma teaming up to be the I'm like, this is actually sick. I really like this. The problem in MVCI, just like Matt said, which is when it has to fill all that plot in, the characterization. All the characters are so bad. Like the characterization and like their interactions with people. Mother Pfeiffer, Ryu is a scientist teaming up with Hulk. And he's like, we've been on a research mission. Yeah. My name's Ryu. But then they do like the fastball special together. And it's actually kind of sick because like, Ryu and Hulk are like, so he's like suppressing the Satsui no Hado and Hulk is trying to suppress the Hulk. I'm like, this is actually cool. It's like one of the cool moments where they take down the big Monster Hunter thing. But then the rest of it sucks, where it's just like, now we're going to stick like Dante and Iron Man together because they're sort of pompousy, I guess.
They're wearing red.
They're wearing red. Sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's really bad.
Wall references can be fun. Doing a fastball special in a game where Wolverine's not allowed, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge I hate that almost.
Yeah, you killed me when there's no X-Men, and then everyone's like, yeah, they're just functions. Don't worry about them. I'm like, oh, you hurt my soul.
I remember I was working in a comic book store when that game came out, and I was like the only fighting game fan working there. So I was the only one who played through it, and one of my other coworkers asked me, are there any actual like cool interactions or anything in the story moment? Well, there's a moment where Ryu is trying to teach the Hulk how to suppress his rage because he's got a Satsui no Hado. He's like, oh, that's cool. What else?
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. And as a big Marvel Comics and a big Capcom fan, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite annoys me so bad because if you asked me, okay, you have to cross over Capcom and Marvel, what's the threat they're going to face? I would instantly have said Sigma and Ultron team up.
Yep.
That's the answer. Like that is the correct answer. And they did it, and it's in this game. Yeah. And we were speaking about doing it as a comic. I want to give like a quick shout out here. Jim Zub, who is a writer for Marvel Comics, he has actually said multiple times when that game was coming out, he tried to get Marvel and Capcom to come together and make a comic, because not only did he write for Marvel, one of his first jobs as a comic writer was writing Street Fighter comics. So he was like, I'm in both worlds. I can do this. Let me do this. And like both teams. Like it wasn't Marvel, it wasn't Capcom. It was both of them together. Like, nope, not happening.
You see, and all I have from that is a Marvel 2 hentai from Japan. So that's all I got.
The actual lore.
That's the T-shirt. I wanted Marvel vs. Capcom lore. All I got was this hentai.
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's a worthy prize.
That's a sentence I wasn't expecting to say this morning.
I feel strongly about this because Max said in his description of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, how there's a mix of both worlds that are merging. It reminded me of how fucking shitty MK versus DC's story mode is in terms of the interactions and what is actually happening. It was innovative because it did it before MK9, having a bunch of cinemas and stuff. I can't take that away from it. But every interaction is, who are you? Yeah. I will fight you. There's rage and I'm angry. And that's the story.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that's one thing that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite did that I still don't know if I think it's a good thing or not. I'm torn because you want to see these characters meeting and interacting and fighting with each other. So when Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite starts and it goes 6 months after the incursion, and I was like, wait, so we're not going to see them actually meeting? We're just skipping all that? But then you go to DC versus Mortal Kombat, is like, oh yeah, so that's what we missed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Flash just running into a level from the game and Batman's there, or sorry, like Scorpion's there. Like and they mistake them for other Mortal Kombat characters. They're like, that's Scorpion, bitch, that's the Flash. Like, I know you don't recognize them because they're not from the universe, but you know, at the same time, it's like, this is the first cinematic story mode. They can only make so many assets because they're just using stages and stuff. And I get that. But like, I think there was a comic book too. I've not read that comic. I think there was a comic book that John Tobias actually was asked to do art for, I think. Or that strikes me as familiar. But all of that is really bad. Now, is all the dialogue bad? No, there's some clever references and there's some funny moments here and there. And Dark Khan is also, that's cool. Okay. But it's disappointing when you go back, but how little actually happens.
Yeah.
It's nothing happens until who's the bad guy? It's Dark Khan. Oh, let's fight him. And that's kind of it. But yeah, that one's just bad. I also kind of think Darkstalkers is kind of like, has all this potential, but because of the way that game released, had all these fractured releases, and the story isn't in your face that much. Like, it's hard to get behind its story because like Pyron's coming and he wants all the strongest life forms to be the strongest to live, and then he'll suck up the energy from the world. That's kind of cool, but then that kind of goes away after a while, and then they bring in Jeddah, and it just kind of gets a little messy. Like, if Darkstalkers were to ever come back, God rest my soul, like, I would like a simple story mode that just kind of, like, I don't know, just does the bare minimum, because it's like, I want what?
You would want them to start over, like kind of like a reboot?
I wouldn't mind that, because there's not a lot of story to get attached to anyway. You know what I mean? So you're not throwing a whole lot away. But I wouldn't mind a reboot, honestly, of that, because I want to get engrossed in that world a bit more. I'm also saying this because I'm rewatching the anime OVA series, and they're so bad. The animation and the fights are so incredible, but when you actually get to the story, I'm like, this is rough to understand what's happening here. But
I just realized what you could do with. I just realized what you could do with Darkstalkers. In Jeddah's ending in 3, he basically erases the universe. You could just say it's a reboot. Like, you could just say, like, oh, that happened, but now the universe has been reborn. So reboot, but you still kind of know the characters. Go to it. If Darkstalkers did come back, though, sure. I kind of wish they did what KI does. Yes. What KI did with 2013, where every character has an arcade mode, and you get to, like, see a little bit of each character in their arcade mode. Because I've always said that you don't necessarily need a story mode. You need characters, but you can have just interactions in the arcade mode.
Thank you.
And not only does that fill in a lot of the gaps, but also that makes people want to play each character's arcade mode.
Thank you.
I honestly feel like Street Fighter, I honestly feel like Street Fighter Alpha 3 did that probably the best because, like, even though almost none of that is canon, they, like, each character, like, meets characters in there, like Sakura, Dan, and Blanca all being friends. That happened in Street Fighter Alpha 3. Yep. Zangief and Honda being friends happened in Street Fighter Alpha 3. Like, you can introduce, like, characters and interactions in your arcade mode. That's a way to do it without having to spend a massive chunk of budget and time in development having to come up with a cinematic story mode.
Yeah, dude, it's funny you mentioned Alpha 3 was when we were figuring out the story stuff for Season 2, we were like, Alpha 3, like, go play this and see how, like, their structure is. And it makes sense because it, like, ties into the other characters and tells a little bit of how this moved to that. So, you want to go play the other characters? Yes, that was, like, no shit, exactly where we were going with it.
Mm-hmm. Dark Horse story is in Weapon Lord. Well, if we ever get D. James onto the fucking show, Weapon Lord's story is nuts because you get different endings for the same characters depending if you're playing tournament mode or story or arcade mode, I believe. Story mode and arcade mode, they have completely different endings. And fuck him for also locking more story behind beating it on hard. And Weapon Lord is not easy to beat on hard. It's not easy to beat. Well, fuck him. Though it's not interesting. As a kid, James, if you're listening, I hated doing that shit. And that's how he knew, because you put passwords to save your progress. So, like, I can't be too mad, but Weapon Lord has a ton of story, because once he was finished working at Capcom on Street Fighter, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, he was like, I want to push shitloads of story. Because we're not allowed to mess with story that much. They can translate it as best they can or whatever. But it's like, let's just go really ham on the story. And some might say he put too much into it, I think. But maybe he'll explain to us someday. So how are we feeling? Do we have any other shout outs, any other Dark Horse stories we want to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I think we've either enraged or made extremely happy a wide variety of communities on this podcast. People are either extremely pissed off or they are just loving this, cheering from the rafters.
So you've described every episode of Triple KO.
Hell
then.
Yeah, brother.
Thorgi,
there is one quick thing that I just want to throw out there real quick. We've already talked about Mortal Kombat, but I just want to say, as much as we kind of like nitpicked and like say like, oh yeah, it's kind of like rebooting and all this back and forth, Mortal Kombat is easily one of, if not the biggest selling fighting game out there right now. And a lot of that is because they know how to appeal to the casual market. And a lot of people, like a lot of the diehard fighting game fans, tend to always see that as like an insult. It's not. That's a huge compliment. That's great that they can appeal to the casual market. And there are so many non-fighting game YouTubers who I follow, and they never talk about Street Fighter. They never talk about Tekken. They never talk about King of Fighters. They will talk about Mortal Kombat at the drop of a hat. And it's because they care about the story and they care about these characters. So that's one thing that I just wanted to come in real quick at the end and say, even if we've like nitpicked Mortal Kombat story throughout this, they know how to appeal that to people out there. And I think that kind of shows that they at least know on some level what they're doing with it, or at least they know how to use lore, because lore is a big thing for appealing to the wider audience out there. If you can get people invested in a character, that's very important, because I believe, I can't remember who said, I think it was Max who said that really cool characters help get people into fighting games. And that's true, but you got to also give them something behind it, because anytime that I've shown somebody a really cool character to try and get them interested in a fighting game, their next question is never, okay, what are their normals? Their next question is always, all right, what's their story? That's always the next thing they go to. And I was watching a charity event recently. I don't remember what it was. It just randomly got recommended to me on YouTube. But they were playing games that they pulled out of a hat. And they pulled out Guilty Gear. And the entire time they were trying to play Guilty Gear, all they kept asking was, what's the story? And people were trying to Google the story. Like, nobody was looking up moves. They were just looking up, like, what's the story? And it's like, that is a big thing about lore. It really does help to appeal fighting games to a wider audience out there. So I just want to make sure that I got that out there.
To echo your sentiment, when I first got introduced to Guilty Gear, I liked Biken the most because it looked like she had the most story. Chick is literally missing an eye and an arm, and she's like a badass, and it's like, wow, she's so cool. Like, that was the thing that immediately pulled me in. Granted, there were 2 other things that they shoved all the story into later on as the games developed, but, you know, I'm just going to say the thing that got me into this character was that, damn, she looks so cool. I wonder what the heck happened to her.
Yeah.
Sorry, Justin, I think you were going to say something before, or no?
No, I agree. Biken was actually my first character too, because I just saw her. I was like, oh, she's sick. So, but I didn't look up her story, unfortunately.
You're looking up to see if there are any hentais written about her, or...
Goddamn, I was about to make that joke.
I'm pretty sure there is somewhere. I don't know.
As soon as you said Shumagorath, I was like, oh, we might need to cut this bit.
Demonetized.
And now we've brought it back 5 times.
There you go. Thorgi, where can people at home find you on the internets?
You can find me on YouTube at Thorgis Arcade. We cover fighting games on there. We try and like make it for a lot more like the casual audience out there. So, you know, we talk more about like, you know, the development of games and stuff like that. We do our retrospectives. We also have a show that a lot of people enjoy called Build a Roster, where we take a hypothetical fighting game and build our dream roster around that. So I try to make the channel just for people who just enjoy fighting games, even if you're bad at them, like me.
I think next time in the future we definitely should all get together to do like a build a roster, because we've kind of flirted with that on the show before. Like we kind of discussed like, oh, if
that'd be a good idea.
Making a new Tekken in the future, it'd be like new rival schools. Let's go. Like I would love to do that very much.
Just come with like the different kind of school clubs that you could turn into a character.
Exactly.
Because we're never gonna get rival schools back ever again.
Where's so like the redneck school?
Don't be like that.
We need like the Hoboken American redneck school or some shit at rival schools, y'all.
We kind of have
like
that.
One school that has like no funding at all.
Yeah,
you know,
like they're completely poor. They just use guns.
Yeah, that's sad. That's so sad.